Where I'm from, if we didn't keep moving, we'd freeze to
Welcome
death.
to my late guide on Tartaglia. I'll be referring to him as Childe from now on. Sorry it took so long to get this guide out. I wanted to do thorough research to make sure I provide accurate information. I also want to say thanks to everyone for helping me reach 10k subs. This community is amazing. Enough with the preamble, let's actually talk about Childe. He is a new Hydro unit that excels as a carry, dealing incredible AoE damage with his quick stylish attacks. The only downside is his long cooldown, forcing you to have a sub-carry on your team to deal damage while Childe's abilities come off cooldown. He doesn't need to worry about this penalty with Constellation 6, but let's be realistic here. Aside from that, he's an incredible carry and really fun to play. Continue watching to learn more about optimizing his attacks, gear, and potential team comp.
Come at me!
Childe is a unique character since he has both range and melee attacks. His range form serves two main purposes: proccing Vaporize reaction with a charge shot, or refunding 20 energy after using his burst. His range elemental burst also applies the Riptide debuff. The general opener to initiate fights with Childe is to first use your support's lingering abilities like Shangling's Guoba or Fischl's Oz in order to start applying elemental debuffs, then use Childe's range burst. After he ults, transition into melee stance and attack the enemy for big damage. His melee stance is where Childe shines, capable of doing large amounts of AoE hydro damage with his normal and charged attacks. If he melees an enemy that already has the Riptide debuff, he will proc an extra AoE hit. This AoE has a 1.5 second cooldown. Also, if an enemy dies with the Riptide debuff, they explode, damaging nearby enemies and applying a fresh Riptide. Childe doesn't need to do the finishing blow, the enemy just needs to die with the debuff on it. His kit excels at damage against groups of enemies and revolves around this debuff. Now let's talk about some ways to optimize his damage. While in range stance, his normal attack string that does the most damage is his natural 6-hit combo, as well as his 3-hit combo. Use the 3-hit version if you don't have time to complete the full 6 hits, such as needing to dodge an incoming attack. You should also animation cancel both strings to maximize damage output. There are 3 main methods to animation cancel. Here I'm comparing the full 6 hits with a jump and dash cancel. Both are good options to increase your DPS. Now I'm showing the third cancel technique with his 3-hit combo. It is to quickly enter and exit the aim mode. To do this, just push R twice real fast. For me, this cancel is the hardest to do consistently, so I prefer to jump or dash. I'm not sure how well this technique works on mobile phones. Also, note that dashing his 3-hit combo drains stamina faster than you can get it back. His strongest strings from the melee stance is doing 3 hits into a charged attack and doing 5 hits into a charged attack. The 3-hit version is slightly stronger but costs more stamina per second. In this comparison, I removed all artifacts with crit rate and used a weapon that doesn't affect charged attacks. You can start holding the attack button after seeing the 3rd or 5th hit and still have time to perform the charged attack. The timing becomes natural with enough practice. You can also animation cancel the charged attack pretty early and still get both hits. Notice I jump before Childe even swings his charged attack twice, and I still get both damage numbers. I prefer to jump here since stamina usage is already getting high with using a charged attack. We know his melee stance is way stronger, but you can't stay in melee stance forever without Constellation 6. Normally, there's the cooldown after getting out of melee stance. You can tell which stance Childe is currently in by looking at his scarf. His scarf will glow and flutter around a lot more while he's in melee form. Here's a table of the cooldown times. They depend on how long you stay in melee stance, with increasing cooldown as you stay longer in the stance. You also get a warning indicator after staying in melee for about 26 seconds. The ideal duration is about 7 to 10 seconds. This will give you enough time for a couple short melee combos and a melee burst if it's ready. Due to this cooldown, a team with Childe usually requires a sub-carry to continue doing damage while his melee stance is on cooldown. I'll talk more about his team comp options in the later section. Now, a quick rundown on his talents and constellations. No big surprises here. His charge range attack applies Riptide. Hitting an enemy already with Riptide does extra hydro damage over time. Though the dot can crit, it does pretty low damage. The main reason to level his normal attack is to increase the damage on the Riptide Burst, aka the enemy death explosion. Foul Legacy is his melee stance. Its attacks does a lot of hydro damage and should be the first talent to level up. Dealing a critical hit will apply Riptide with the Ascension passive. Hitting an enemy that already has Riptide will cause another AoE hit around the target, and makes Childe one of the best AoE damage dealers out there. His burst changes depending on melee or range stance. The range burst hits in front of him, applies Riptide, and refunds 20 energy. His melee burst hits all around him, and does more damage than the range version. Also, if the enemy is already affected by Riptide, the melee burst will do additional damage. His first passive makes Riptide last as long as your melee stance, since you don't want to stay in melee stance for too long anyway. This will also give more time for the death explosion to occur. His second passive is super important for Childe, because it allows Riptide applications without needing to do a charged arrow or burst. His general passive is one of the best combat passives in the game. It increases normal attack levels by 1, which is super beneficial for your sub-carry. For comparison, leveling a talent from 6 to 7 costs 120,000 Mora and a lucky weekly boss drop. That's the amount of value this talent provides. The bonuses he gets from his Constellation is pretty simple. It lowers the cooldown of his melee stance, get more energy recharge, and do more damage. Eventually, his Constellation 6 removes his melee stance cooldown. I don't recommend trying to get C6 unless you are a true whale. Now on to weapons. The best free-to-play weapon is the Prototype Crescent. The compound bow is not good for him since Childe mostly does hydro damage, so the physical bonus does not help. Decent 3-star options are the Raven Bow and Slingshot, but if you have spare blueprints, the Prototype Crescent is much stronger than the 3-star weapons. If you account for all weapons, then the Skyward Harp is his best in slot, followed by the Amos Bow. Rust and Viridescent Hunt are the best 4-star weapons for him. If you don't run a team with Venti or Sucrose to pull enemies together, then Viridescent Hunt has much more value due to its passive. Use that over Rust if that's the case. None of the energy recharge bows are that good, and the Stringless isn't that good since the passive only buffs his burst, and the single hit when changing from range to melee. These energy and elemental mastery bows are much better on other characters. On to artifacts. The current selection to choose from is alright, but the best set for Childe is definitely going to be the Hydro set, which is currently not yet in the game. If you enjoy playing as Childe, make sure to keep an eye for when this set comes out. For now, I recommend getting 2 set bonuses. Good sets to choose from are Noblesse and any of the plus attack artifacts. Noblesse makes his high damage burst even stronger. I don't really recommend the Wanderer set that gives extra elemental mastery. Since Childe applies the Hydro debuff really fast, he mostly will not be the character to trigger the elemental reaction, making this mastery bonus not super helpful. This is because elemental reaction damage is entirely calculated by the stats of the character applying the second debuff, and not affected by the first debuff on the enemy. The 4-piece bonus is nice, but not enough to make up for the wasted 2-piece bonus. Another amazing set on Childe is actually the Retracing Bolide. When Childe has a shield, he gains 40% more damage from his normal and charge attacks, which is where the majority of his damage comes from. To use this set though, you need a team that can apply shields. One of the best choices is a Constellation 1 Beidou, since her burst provides a shield and electrifies enemies. Her ult synergizes really well with Childe's Hydro attacks. Another good option to apply shields is Noelle. You can use her breastplate to immediately activate a shield, and it generates crystallized shards if it hits an enemy, providing an additional shield if breastplate happens to break. A burst support Ningguang is also viable to generate shields, and she can remain on the field to dish damage while Childe's melee stance is on cooldown. This set is good for a lot of carries, and when the Hydro set is released, you can transfer the Bolide set to another carry and not let it go to waste. The best stats for Childe is, in order, Hydro damage, crit rate, crit damage, and attack. For Childe, crit rate is more important than crit damage due to his second ascension passive. The passive applies the Riptide debuff if he crits someone in melee stance, and you want to get Riptide up as quick as possible. You'll also find a major DPS increase if you manage to find a goblet that gives Hydro bonus damage, since everything except his normal attack in range stance does Hydro. Finally, onto team comps. To get the most out of Childe without Constellation 6, you will need a sub-carry to provide damage while his melee stance is on cooldown. Any character with low elemental skill cooldowns or strong normal attacks will work. Candidates include any of the 5-star carries, Xiangling, Bennett, Ningguang, and Razor. The other units on your team will depend on your artifact set. If you are running the Bolide set, then you'll need shield generators such as Noelle, Ningguang, Beidou with Constellation 1, or Zhongli and Xinyan in the near future. Diona's E also provides a shield, but it doesn't last long enough as the shields that Geo units make. The last slot can be filled by a support or healer. Fischl and Xinchu are good DPS supports. Sucrose and Venti can group enemies together for Childe to do more splash damage, and Chi-Chi, Bennett, Jean, or Barbara are good healers. The enamel supports will be even stronger if you use the Viridescent Venerer set on them. If you are not using the Bolide set, then you should run 2 Pyro units for more damage. Good Pyro pairs for Childe include Diluc, Klee, or Xiangling as the sub-carry, and Bennett, Xiangling, or Xinyan as a support. The last slot is similar to the Bolide team. Fill it in with a DPS support or a healer, depending on the rest of your team. This ended up being my longest character guide, but Childe has so many unique traits to go over. I appreciate all the viewers sticking with me to the end, and thanks again for everyone that liked, subscribed, and commented on my videos. And as always, have fun out there, traveler.